Red Dead Redemption 2 is a video game released by Rockstar Games in 2018, and Othello is a play written by Shakespeare, first performed in 1604. Red Dead Redemption 2 is set in 1899, like during the fallout of the American frontier times, like the Western cowboy era, and it tells the story of Arthur Morgan, who is like a senior member in the Vandelin gang ran by Dutch Vandelin. Othello follows the story of Othello, specifically following his struggles as a black person in an area mostly dominated by white people in the 1500s. It's set during the Venetian-Ottoman War in the 1570s. They share some themes of loyalty, jealousy, deception, and trust. I fully understand that this idea is insane, and how are we comparing a play that was written centuries ago to a game released just a few years ago? But honestly, it works, trust me. Spoiler alert for Red Dead Redemption 2, and I guess Othello if anyone cares. So Dutch Vandelin is the charismatic leader of the Vandelin gang. He's very anti-civilization, anti-capitalist, stealing from the rich, giving to the poor type, like Robin Hood. Or at least he was when the gang kind of first started out.
I got a saying, my friend. We shoot fellas as need shooting, save fellas as need saving, and feed them as need feeding. We are gonna find out what you need.
Othello is a charismatic general. Charisma, they share that. Of the Venetian army, he's very highly respected, very highly trusted, just like Dutch. They both share a character who they believe to be a friend, who will eventually reveal themselves to not be a friend. For Dutch, that is the one and only Micah Bell. Micah Bell joins the gang about 6 months before the game begins. He is allowed to join after he saves Dutch's life during a deal kind of gone wrong. Dutch trusts him and likes him after saving his life. Dutch believes he is a valuable member of the gang, someone to be trusted, someone who's loyal, which is a big thing for Dutch. So Dutch likes Micah quite a lot. However, the rest of the gang, specifically the women who are part of the gang, Arthur and Hosea, they hate him. The women think of him as a creep.
I mean, why the hell do we need a gaggle of girls who won't even fuck you if you put a gun to their head?
Which he is. He is vile and proud of it.
Get out of here, you damn parasite!
And Hosea and Arthur, first of all, also see him as a creep, but they also see him for definitely who he really is, which is just a rat and a snake through and through. It's actually theorized that Micah wanted to get rid of Hosea and Arthur for this reason. For example, the mission in chapter 3 where Dutch and Micah go to meet with Colm O'Driscoll, and they have Arthur on a mountain as a lookout, and then he gets kidnapped, and you have to fight your way through a bunch of O'Driscolls to get back to camp. There's a theory that is actually all orchestrated by Micah, which, to be fair, would not put it past him. Again, in the Saint-Denis bank robbery in chapter 4, where Hosea, bless his soul, loses his life.
I've given you enough chances. Come on!
It's theorized that Micah is the one wearing white because he's the one who ratted out the robbery himself, so him wearing white was a way of saying, hey, I told you, don't shoot me please. Micah from the very beginning of the game tries to get into Dutch's ear. He's very manipulative, and he's very good at feeding Dutch's ego.
You know, you always had the most incredible way of putting things.
Mr. Miller has a way of putting things. Me, I'm just an old outlaw, not prepared to go quietly.
Oh, you're more than that, Dutch. You're... Well, you're amazing.
He knows that's what Dutch looks for, kind of, in a person. That's kind of how you get into Dutch's heart, I guess, if that makes sense. Throughout the game, Micah will suck up to Dutch. He will kind of insinuate to Dutch that, especially towards the end of the game, he'll kind of insinuate to Dutch that someone he trusted has ratted them out. For example, he does it to Arthur and John quite a lot.
I've been talking to Dutch. Feels to me like he's turned challenging every move Dutch makes. I know you have your doubts about him too, Morgan.
I got no doubts about John. I've known him for 15 years.
And the reason he's able to do that is because throughout the game, he's kind of poisoning Dutch's mind, I guess, with his words. He's like using his little ratty manipulative ways to get into Dutch's head and convince him that these people that he trusts are all secretly working against him. And especially after Hosea's dead and Arthur is really sick from his tuberculosis, that really works. Micah becomes Dutch's second in command right after Hosea dies, because Dutch is deeply hurt from the death of Hosea. He kind of needs somebody to like fill that role that Hosea had, and he chooses Micah because Micah throughout the game has been convincing Dutch that he is the only person he can trust. So after Hosea's died and Arthur is dying, he kind of starts to really believe that, and he really takes that into consideration. And for Othello, there is a character who Othello believes is noble, honest, trustworthy, called Iago. Now, Iago hates Othello, and the reason he hates Othello is because he wanted the position of lieutenant, and he promoted another character called Cassio to that instead. So because of that, he resents Othello and Cassio. Another thing that plays into it is Iago's racism. He's an incredibly racist character, especially by 1500 standards. He doesn't believe that Othello should be able to hold the power that he does simply because Othello is black. Sorry, my entire camera just flipped. Anyway, despite all that, Othello is incredibly trusting of Iago, just like everybody else is. Iago's nickname from like every character throughout the entire play is Honest Iago, because he has been able to like cement himself as the trustworthy character, the one that everybody can turn to. He's got everyone thinking he's a good guy when he just isn't. Iago doesn't need to like get rid of anybody to get into Othello's mind. Iago just kind of does it. Iago like mainly is able to play on Othello's, first of all, his trust, but not that. He's able to play on Othello's insecurities quite a lot. For example, Othello is really insecure about his past and his race because of where he's grown up. Othello thinks that his wife, Desdemona, will think that he isn't good enough, think that he's ugly, think that he's too aggressive, when he's just none of those things, because he's insecure, but also because Iago really plays on that and makes him believe that that is the truth. The main catalyst for Othello's downfall, because of Iago's manipulation, is that Iago convinces him that Cassio is having an affair with Desdemona, and because he's so insecure and because of Iago's manipulation skills, Othello believes that. At first he might brush it off, but as the play goes on, Othello just starts to really think that that's the truth and believe that Iago is the only person that he can trust, similar with Dutch and Micah. Like towards the end of Red Dead Redemption 2, Dutch really believes that Micah is the only person that he can trust. Anyway, some of the things that Iago says to make Othello really believe that Cassio has been sleeping with Desdemona is that he'll make things up kind of as he goes along, and then he'll tell his friend Roderigo about it and then relay that information onto Othello. For example, Othello is like begging him for proof near the end of Act 3 that Desdemona really slept with Cassio, because at this point he's really losing it, and Iago says that him and Cassio had to like share a bed at one point, and Cassio was like making physical gestures of like hugging, kissing Desdemona while he was sleeping, and also telling her like how he loved her, how beautiful she was, etc. And Othello just believes that, and he like loses his entire mind. Arthur Morgan was Dutch's lead enforcer and like third in command. He joined the gang after he was found by Dutch and Hosea at around 13 years old. Dutch and Hosea raised Arthur as father figures. Like, for example, Dutch taught Arthur and John to read, which is something that Arthur tells Charles in chapter 1. Arthur trusted Dutch more than anybody. He really believed in him and his vision, and he loved him like a father, but he did love Hosea a little bit more. Throughout the game, Dutch does insinuate that he believes that Arthur may be losing faith in him. For example, he says it in chapter 1.
You said revenge is a luxury we can't afford.
Yeah, just wasn't sure you agreed with me.
Arthur, have you completely lost faith in me?
He says it in chapter 4.
You tell me, Arthur. Is it? Have some goddamn faith!
And then after chapter 4, especially after Guarma, it's all he'll like say. After they arrive back from Guarma, Dutch is kind of completely out of it. That is the end of Dutch van der Linde. And that is when Micah truly gets into his head, and Dutch really believes Arthur has no faith in him anymore. He's lost all loyalty. He's gone, basically. Especially when Arthur gets really sick, when he's like truly affected by his tuberculosis, Micah uses this as a way to like convince Dutch that Arthur's weak, he's delusional, he doesn't believe in you anymore, you need to cut him loose, he's gone, he's a lost cannon, all that. And Dutch really believes it. Dutch even makes fun of Arthur's disease a couple times.
Well, Arthur needs to rest.
During chapter 6. And in chapter 6 is when Arthur really, really does lose his faith in Dutch. There are a few voice lines in the game where Arthur clearly thinks he can save Dutch, and that's what he wants to try and do. But as the game nears its end, he changes his mind, and he decides that it's best to use the limited time he has left to save whoever he could, bar Dutch. For example, he helped John, Abigail, and Jack escape so they can be together as family. There are some side missions, for example, the Charlotte side mission, when he teaches her how to hunt so she can survive out in the wild and consoles her about her husband's death, and all those nice things he does for her. When he meets Edith Downs back in Annisburg, and he gives her and Archie all the money they need to get out of there. He loses his faith in Dutch, and with that he loses his father figure. As he's dying, he tells Dutch that he gave him all he had.
I gave you all I had. I did.
And Dutch just walks away as he dies. Michael Cassio in Othello was, like I said, promoted to lieutenant by Othello. He was like charismatic, good-looking, well-educated kind of character, and as I said, he was resented by Iago because he wanted the position of lieutenant. Cassio is a trusted friend of Othello, which is, why he gets promoted, until Iago gets into Othello's head. When Iago gets into Othello's head, because Iago is so jealous of Cassio, not only is he manipulating Othello into hating Cassio and into distrusting Desdemona and all that, he's also manipulating Cassio into getting himself fired. For example, in Act 2, Scene 3, Iago convinces Cassio to get drunk in Act 2, Scene 3, and when Cassio gets drunk, he ends up getting into a fight, which Othello hears of, causing him to then fire him as lieutenant. So like Arthur, Cassio was cast aside, and he was eventually distrusted, but Cassio never blamed Othello, really, for what happened to him. I think Cassio, especially at the end, he knew that it was all Iago's fault, so he didn't hold that against Othello. Near the end of the play as well, Iago actually convinces Roderigo to stab Cassio to try and kill him. It doesn't work, and Cassio survives, but the fact that that happens is more just proof of how diabolical Iago actually is. Since Cassio doesn't actually die from this attempted murder, at the end of the play he's actually promoted to governor of Cyprus, and he's left in charge of how Iago gets punished, so he eventually gets his revenge. John Marston also survives events of Red Dead Redemption 2, and I think he's another character who can kind of be compared to Cassio. John Marston was Dutch's prize pony, according to Arthur. John was raised by Dutch and Hosea, just like Arthur was. And then when John had a son of his own with Abigail Roberts, he actually left the gang for a year, which Arthur never forgave him for until the end of the game. John was actually betrayed by Dutch more times than anybody, I think. No, that's probably not true, but he was betrayed by Dutch quite a lot. First was during the Saint-Denis bank robbery, when John got arrested and Dutch didn't help him. John seems adamant that Dutch could have done something to save him from that, but he didn't. And then when John was actually in prison, which Dutch finds out about after getting back from Guarma, he specifically tells the gang to not free John from prison. So Abigail kind of begs Arthur and Sadie to do that for her, so they end up doing it, which makes Dutch incredibly angry.
What are you doing here?
Good to see you too, partner.
I meant I hadn't sent for you yet.
I will.
But I said that.
Yeah, I know what you said. I felt different.
Is that so?
And again, during the last train robbery of the game, John gets shot and Dutch and Micah go back to help him, but instead they just leave him to die, which, when John comes back, he is obviously not very happy about that.
You left me! You left me to die! My boy, I didn't have a choice. John, I didn't have a choice. Left me!
In Guarmard, Dutch actually is talking to Arthur in a cave where he insinuates that he thinks John and Abigail might have ratted out the Saint Denis bank robbery, which Arthur is kind of really taken aback by, as you would be. A lot like Cassio, John actually survives the end of the Vanderlyn gang, thanks to Arthur, kind of, because Arthur dedicates his last ounce of strength to saving John so he can go and live a life with his family, which he does, briefly. On a ranch down near Blackwater called Beecher's Hope. In the epilogue of Red Dead Redemption 2, John, Sadie, and Charles find out where Micah is, and they kill him. So again, like Cassio, John also gets revenge on the person who betrayed everybody. Michael Cassio actually had a lover in Othello. Her name was Bianca. She was deeply in love with him, but he didn't care about her at all, which brings me into the next part. When Dutch Vanderlyn met Molly O'Shea, she left her wealthy family in Dublin to be with Dutch and the gang, because she fell absolutely head over heels for him. Their relationship is affectionate at the beginning of the game, they're very into each other, they're just so deeply in love in Chapter 2 in Horseshoe Overlook. However, after Horseshoe, Dutch begins to neglect Molly, they have frequent arguments.
You don't know the first thing about a woman's needs.
How selfish are you? Are you even aware of the price on my head? The pressures I'm under?
If you'd only talk to me, I could help. I want to help you, Dutch, but there's this wall.
You can help by leaving me alone so I can actually think for once.
You're a bastard, Dutch Vanderlyn.
She spends as much time away from him as she can because she's just miserable. In Chapter 5, Molly is just gone. She's disappeared, nobody knows where she is, nobody really cares where she is either, unfortunately. I think a lot of the women in the gang didn't like Molly because she didn't do anything. Like, the rest of them were working so that, you know, the gang could survive, and they were, like, helping wherever they could. But Molly, I think because she was with Dutch, she was kind of exempt from that, much like Dutch was, by the way. So I think there was a lot of resentment between the other female members of the gang and Molly. When Molly returns at the very beginning of Chapter 6, like the first cutscene, she's drunk, she was found by Uncle in Saint Denis and brought back to camp, where Molly admits that she was the rat as like a final cry for attention from Dutch. She's shouting that she loved him, and Dutch is just stood there in shock while she's saying all this. He grabs his gun and goes to shoot her, but Arthur stops him, telling him that she's drunk, she's crazy, she's not worth it. But she is then shot by Susan Grimshaw with a shotgun in the stomach, where she dies. Her body is then burned off screen due to Susan's like instructions.
Yeah, I told him and I tell him again. Now I've got God's ear.
You told who what?
Mr. Milton and Mr. Ross about the bank robbery, and I wanted them to kill you.
You did what?
I loved you, you goddamn bastard! Go on, shoot me!
Crazy. She ain't worth it.
I'm not so big now. Are we, Your Majesty?
You...
So, unfortunately, Molly left her entire life behind to be with this man who didn't love her, didn't want her near him. He was neglectful, he couldn't care less about her. And when she comes back declaring that she loves him, saying that she's the rat, when let's be real, she so clearly wasn't. I mean, Agent Milton says it himself after she dies, fair enough.
Not all you boys have quite so many scruples. Old Micah Bell?
Micah? You mean Molly?
Molly O'Shea? Sweated her a couple of times, never talked a word, had to let her go. Micah Bell. We picked him up when you boys came back from the Caribbean, and he's been a good boy ever since.
but still, she was not the rat. She was not ratting to anybody. And Desdemona, in Othello, she married Othello in secret before the play starts. Like, the first scene with them is Othello convincing Desdemona's father that their marriage is great, that they're in love, they should be allowed to be together, which he eventually agrees to. Iago gets in the way, obviously, of their relationship. He's telling Othello that Desdemona's cheating on him with Cassio, and as that happens, their very affectionate love at the beginning, just like Molly and Dutch's, becomes a lot worse than Molly and Dutch's did. While Molly and Dutch, they had frequent arguments, they were like verbal, and Molly ended up dying because she loved him. Othello becomes physically violent with Desdemona. He also does become distant, neglectful, argumentative, but he becomes physically violent with her. In Act 4, Scene 1, Othello actually hits Desdemona. He strikes her in front of Lodovico, who was like a Venetian nobleman, so very important, high-class, rich guy. He obviously does this out of jealousy, believing that she's been unfaithful and slept with Cassio, which, even if she had, not an excuse to hit her, but like, also she didn't. Anyway, similar to how Molly dies, you know, begging for Dutch to love her back, declaring that she loved him, like, all that, Desdemona dies still telling Othello that she loves him. Even though he's actively strangling her, she's telling him that she loves him. Throughout the entire play, even after hitting her, even as he's killing her, Desdemona never stops loving Othello. Desdemona is constantly defending Othello throughout the entire thing. So just like Molly, as she dies, she's still deeply, deeply in love with him. Okay, so now I want to just talk about Dutch, okay, and Othello. So starting with Dutch, because I don't think Dutch's downfall was as simple as Othello's. I think Othello's was quite simple in that he was insecure, there was a man who hated him, and that man who hated him was able to convince him that his insecurities were the truth and cause his mental decline that way, just through pure manipulation. But Dutch's was different. Yeah, he was manipulated a lot throughout the story by Micah, but I think it's widely agreed upon that Dutch was already losing his mind from the very beginning. For example, on the Blackwater ferry job, which we hear about in Red Dead 1 and Red Dead 2 but we've never seen, Dutch kills a woman, a completely innocent woman by the way, a woman on the ferry called Heidi McCourt, which the rest of the gang was just completely shocked by. They were like, that's not you at all, Dutch, what are you doing? In chapter 1 in Coulter, Dutch asks Arthur, have you lost faith in me? Which mirrors the end of the game, where that is kind of all he's constantly saying to like everybody, including Arthur, of course. Also in chapter 1, Dutch decides he needs to go after the O'Driscoll, who are like an enemy group to the Vanderlyn gang, because Dutch killed their leader, Colm O'Driscoll's brother. He killed a woman that Dutch loved a lot called Annabelle. So Dutch decides to go after them because they were camped nearby, even though they were supposed to be laying low. Which is what Arthur questioned. Like, we don't need to do this. Why? You always taught me that revenge was bad, that kind of situation. And then it's why Dutch was like, have you lost faith in me? And Dutch was like, Arthur, this isn't revenge, this is protection. They're gonna kill us when they find out about us. But I don't think it was. I think it was revenge. I think he just wanted to kill a bunch of O'Driscolls because they were there and easy targets, which is exactly what they do. And after that, they find some plans that the O'Driscolls had to rob a train, which belonged to a very powerful man who will become a very powerful enemy of the Vanderlyn gang after this, called Leviticus Cornwall. Hosea is worried about this train robbery. He tells Dutch that they were supposed to be lying low and then heading back west for the money after the heat died down on them.
Why are we doing this? Weather's breaking, we could leave. I thought we was lying low.
What do you want from me, Hosea?
I just don't want any more folks to die, Dutch.
We're living, Hosea, we're living. Look at me. We're living, even you. But we need money. Everything we has in Blackwater. You fancy heading back there?
No. Listen, Dutch, I ain't trying to undermine you. I just want to stick to the plan, which was to lie low, then head back out west. Now, suddenly we're about to rob a train.
Dutch just ignores Hosea when he says this, and he just goes along with it anyway. They rob the train, which angers Cornwall, which then makes him a very powerful enemy. He is the one paying off the Pinkerton Detective Agency for the entire game to keep tracking down the Van der Linde gang. Like, if they didn't rob that train, Cornwall would have had no reason to keep paying the Pinkertons to look for them, and they might have just ended up getting that Blackwater money back. Just saying. Also, when Arthur is captured by Colm O'Driscoll in Chapter 3, after Arthur escapes from that, he asks Dutch, like, if he was planning on coming and rescuing him, which Dutch tells him of course he was, but that is debatable because why did nobody ever show up? A lot of people question Dutch's planning skills. They say that they weren't as good, or at least, like, as time went on they stopped being as good. An example of that is Dutch's plan to, like, worsen the feud between the Grey family and the Braithwaite family, and then rob them by playing both sides and becoming trusted by both families to then betray them both and rob them. Obviously this backfired and like the gang felt quite uneasy about it, like especially John. Another thing that people think might have contributed to Dutch's mental decline is his head injury on the trolley in Saint Denis.
Does this trolley go to Tahiti? I hope so. The thing's broke. Hold on!
After the failed robbery of the train station, another thing he does is he kills Angelo Bronte.
So filth has got to be disposed of! Your friends, the Pinkertons, are gonna come and rescue you, you repulsive little maggot! Call them now! You call them!
In Chapter 4, he drowns him in the swamp, in a fit of rage, just looking for vengeance. He claims he has to kill Bronte so the gang can safely rob the bank, because Bronte did control like the entire city, but it's very clearly out of revenge, because he feels hurt by Angelo Bronte convincing the gang to rob the train station when there's nothing there. Obviously a massive, massive factor contributing to Dutch's mental decline was also the death of Hosea. He lost his best friend, his moral compass. He was distraught by that. It also made an opening for Micah to come in and get even more into Dutch's ear, basically. Obviously, another thing that shows that he's kind of already on his way out anyway is in Guarma, which fair enough is after like a couple other things have happened, like Micah's been manipulating him, he's just lost Hosea, etc. But when Dutch expresses his concerns that John and Abigail could be the rats, that can kind of be seen as an example of Dutch's like declining mental state. Same with when he kills Gloria in the cave in Guarma.
Pay more! Pay now!
Dutch? What are you doing? Jesus! Easy, Dutch! What was that?
Horrible old crone.
But you killed her.
She was gonna betray us, Arthur. Couldn't you tell?
That was a defenseless elderly woman. Sure, she had a knife, but Arthur and Dutch were two very strong men in their prime, with guns and whatever else Arthur was carrying in that satchel. Like, they would have been fine by just like telling her no, like when she threatened them for more gold. Dutch did not have to kill her, especially in the way that he did. Obviously another thing that shows that Dutch was kind of insane, but also kind of showed that he didn't trust Arthur, I feel like it kind of shows both, is when they're robbing Cornwall's like oil refinery, and Dutch just leaves Arthur to be killed when he very easily could have done something about it, which then also inadvertently led to Eagle Fly's death.
He got one! A white one! Dad? I need help! I need help!
And then of course when he kills Cornwall just out in the open, surrounded by Pinkertons.
I'll tell you what. You give me this ship, $10,000, and safe passage out of here, I'll let you live.
I'll do no such thing.
You sure? Good. I prefer it this way.
You lost your man!
That was insane. So yeah, basically, with all of this, it's clear that Dutch kind of was already losing his mind before Micah started properly getting into his ear. Unlike Othello, whose downfall was purely caused by Iago's manipulation, Iago manipulating him brought out his insecurities because he already saw himself as an outsider. He already believed every racial stereotype under the sun about himself, even though, like, obviously none of that is true. And it leads him to lose all of the respect of everyone around him and kill his wife, who he loves. She loved him. Like, Dutch's downfall was caused by so many things. Like, Dutch was already losing his mind, he hit his head, he lost Hosea, plus there was Micah. Othello, it was purely just Iago's manipulation. So yeah, I think there are a lot of similarities between Red Dead Redemption 2 and Othello. I feel like there are a lot more that I haven't included in here, but like, we don't have all day, let's be real. So yeah, I feel like Othello and Dutch, they aren't too similar in how their like downfalls happen. Obviously, there is the manipulation factor, but for Dutch, it's just a lot more complex. I feel like there's a lot more than just manipulation for Dutch. There's so much more that comes with it. So yeah, thanks for watching. I hope it wasn't too all over the place. I did have a script written, but then I thought I don't want to read off of a script because it'll sound so robotic. So I've just been reading from some bullet points which are kind of all over the place. So yeah, I'm sorry if that's not too good. But anyway, yeah, thanks for watching my first video, like the first video ever made, might I say. So yeah, please like this if you see it, subscribe maybe because I might do this more, and comment who your favorite Red Dead character is, or who your favorite Othello character is, or just anything, like anything at all. If this reaches anybody, that would be great. Anyway, thank you, and I'm gonna go play Zelda.